Okay, this is R4b, the second video for review section 4, and we've been doing some grouping, and let's go ahead and go to example 7. 12x cubed plus 10x squared minus 8x. Alright, we're going to go ahead and factor our, well, what we can out. I can factor a 2 and an x out, leaving me with an 6x squared plus 5x minus 4. Okay, so far, so good. Now, I notice that I have a 6 here, so I've got to do it by grouping. So I'm going to multiply 6 times negative 4 and get negative 24. So again, what I'm looking for, two numbers multiplied together give me negative 24, added together give me a 5. Alright, so everything else is going to stay the same. And I'm going to find two numbers multiplied give me 24, added give me 5. So I've got, let's see, 12 and 2, 6 and 4, 8 and 3. And the minute I find something that if I take the sum or the difference of, I'm going to get 5, I'm going to stop. So if this were a plus 8x and I subtracted 3x, these two numbers added together give me a positive 5, multiplied together give me a negative 24. Okay? Not too bad. Now, here's a little bit of a trick here. You can write these as positive 8x minus 3x. You can also write this as negative 3x plus 8x. You could switch these around. Okay? It doesn't matter if they're in this order or this order. They both give you 5x. But one of the things that's really important, notice there are 3 signs here. 1, 2, 3. It's always nice if this sign here is a positive. Okay? It's always nice if that's a positive. If it has to be a negative, it has to be. But if I took this number and switched them around, now that middle number or that middle sign is a positive, and that's what I want. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to rewrite this whole thing. So let's do 2x times 6x squared, and I'm going to switch these around so that the plus sign is first. Reason for that is I'm going to do grouping, and when I group I put a parenthesis around the first two and a parenthesis around the second two. Now parentheses and negative signs do not play well together. So if this can be a plus sign, plus signs and parentheses do play well together. You don't have to worry about changing signs or doing anything weird. So that's why I switched them around, so that there's a plus sign here that plays well with this grouping symbol, which basically means I don't have to worry about doing anything. So now I have 2x, and what can factor out of that? Let's make a bracket here. 3x can factor out, right? 2x minus, alright, we just pulled that whole thing out of there. When you pull that whole thing out of there, there's got to be something in its place. You can't just make it go away. So we're going to put a 1 there. So whenever you pull something completely out, there's always an assumed 1. Now that's the same thing with this right here. We're going to pull a 4 out. And what do we have left? 2x minus 4 we pulled out, so it doesn't exist, but there's still a 1 there. There has to be. Now I can go into the theory on why that's true, but I'll just suffice it to say this actually means 4 times 1, right? So when we pull the 4 out, the 1 is still there. Alright, and notice this and this are the same. Has to be. Put our grouping symbols there, and then we do this. We take what we pulled out, put those together, and we take these and leave those together as one group. And we are done once we get all the way down to there. Alright, let's continue on here. This is number 94 in the homework, and I'm going to do this one just because, again, I think it's important for you to practice this whole grouping thing. So let's take 8 times negative 15, okay, because that's going to be the number we're going to be looking for here. So that's going to be negative 120, 8 times negative 15. That's what we're going for. So two numbers multiplied together give me a negative 120, added give me a positive 2. Now I can start listing all the factors of 120, but I know that they're going to be two numbers. They're going to be awful close together because when you add or subtract them, you get 2. So like 30 and 4 are not going to be a good choice because there's a lot of room between those two numbers. But if I took something like, 60 and 2, nope, not going to do that. How about 15 and 8? Nope, there's 7 difference between those, so I need to go a little bit closer together. How about 10 and 12? 10 times 12 is 120, and the difference between those is 2. So that's going to be the numbers I'm going to look at. So what am I going to use? Two numbers added up give me 2x. What am I going to do with 10 and 12 so that I get a positive 2x? I'm going to do a positive 12x minus 10x. Okay? So that gives me a positive 2, multiplied together gives me a negative 120. So that's how I pick those. Now remember when I said that you need to really try to make sure this middle sign is positive because it plays well with your grouping symbol over here. I'm going to leave it negative just to show you that you can still do it because sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes both these numbers that you multiply that you're going to use are going to be negative, so it doesn't matter which one's first. A negative is going to be in the middle, if that makes sense. At this point, we have a positive 12 and a negative 10. But what if we had a negative 12 and a negative 10? Then it wouldn't matter what order they're in. They're both going to have a negative sign there, and we're going to have a negative in that middle. So I'm just going to show you here real quick that it is possible to do these when you have a negative sign as your middle term. So let's go ahead and group these. 8x squared plus 12x. Usually not any problem because there's usually a plus sign there. So your first group is not going to have an issue. When you put grouping symbols on, you change the sign of everything in the new group. So when you pull a negative out of a grouping symbol, everything changes. When you put it in, everything changes. So when you use grouping symbols and you have a negative number, everything inside is going to change. So this was a negative 10. We put a group around here. Now it's a positive. This was a negative 15. Now it's a positive. That's all you have to do. That's all you have to know. From here on out, everything same old, same old. So we pull out a 4x and we're left with 2x plus 3. And we're going to pull out a 5, and that leaves me with a 2x plus 3, which, these are the same. Now, you can always tell if you did something incorrect if these are not the same. If they're not the same, you did something wrong. And usually what's going to happen is the numbers are going to be the same, but this will be a plus 3 and this will be a minus 3. And what that means is you did not change the signs of the numbers that are in here. Okay, it's not a terrible thing. Let's say that you did get a negative 3 here. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Change it to a positive 3. Okay, everything should work out the exact same. If these have different signs, just change this to the right sign. This one will be right. Okay, 9 times out of 10, this one will be right. The only time this one will be goofy is if there were a negative sign in front of here. But let's not worry about that. That's probably not going to happen yet. So change it to a positive 3 if you end up with 2x minus 3, and you should be okay. It just means that you forgot to switch the signs around. Okay, and then we get 2x plus 3. And there you go. You're done. Life is good. Okay, so let's go back to the work again, and we're going to look at some special factorizations on page 27. So the first special one we're going to look at is the difference of two squares. The difference of two squares means you have two terms, and you can take the square root of both of them, and you have a minus sign. So when you have two terms, you can take the square root of both of them, and you have a minus sign. You get for an answer square root of the first term, square root of the second term, square root of the first term, square root of the second term. So you get two binomials with the square root of each term, with one being a plus and one being a minus. And that is it. If you have 9a squared minus 25, square root of the first term, square root of the second term, one's a plus, one's a minus, you're done. Okay? 6x to the fourth minus 6y to the fourth. Again, square root of the first term, square root of the second term. I can't take the square root of 6, but lo and behold, I have a 6 in each one of those, so I can pull a 6 out. Okay? Now can I take the square root of that? Okay? Square root of x to the fourth would look like this, right? And the square root has an index of 2. Okay? The square root of anything always means this divided into the exponent. So how many times does 2 go into 4? Twice. So the square root of x to the fourth is x squared. Square root of y to the fourth is y squared. So the square root of each one of those twice, one is a minus and one's a plus, and you have a 6 there. Okay, now what we have, see what we've got here. Let's move this up a little bit. I have a difference of 2 squares right here. So a lot of students are going to leave that as being done. But this can be factored even more. Square root of the first term, square root of the second term. Square root of the first term, square root of the second term. So this is that x squared minus y squared simplified. And then I can leave x squared plus y squared alone. This will never simplify. If it were cubed, x cubed plus y cubed, yes, it would simplify. X squared plus y squared does not simplify, only when it's a minus sign. And then it becomes the difference of 2 squares. So that is the whole answer that you get there. And again, I know I'm going pretty speedy through all of this, but you should have had it in Algebra 2. And this should not be too terrible except for just remembering everything. Okay. So middle of page 21, it gives you a couple more options there. So example 9, we have x squared plus 8x plus 16. All right, an easy way to determine whether or not it's going to factor is take the square root of the first term, square root of the second term. So square root of the first term, square root of the second term. Multiply those together and then double them. And what do you get? If you get this middle term, then it is factorable. So if both of the signs when in this trinomial are positive, then you don't even have to really do the math. You just take the square root of the first term, square root of the second term, put a plus sign, and square it. And you're done. Okay? If I had something like, let's do this in yellow, 25y squared minus 30y plus 9. Well, let's see if it's doable. Square root of the first term, square root of the second term, multiply them together, double them, and I get 30y. Yes, so that means this is doable. Knowing that it's doable, I make a parenthesis, put a minus sign, square root of the first term, square root of the second term, and square it, and I'm done. Okay, so key thing is a trinomial with 2 plus signs, you're going to get a plus sign in the answer. A negative sign here, and you're going to get a negative sign in the answer. This is not going to work if this sign were negative. It's just if this one is. So square root of that, put a minus sign. Square root of that, a plus sign. If this is plus, this is plus. If this is minus, this is minus. And that's it for that one. So I'm going to end this video and do one more.